Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Get Zoned In podcast. I'm Duke Baxter here with Steve Nicorak inside Zone Sports Academy, and we are excited for another episode today. Last week, we spoke about topics from our Zoom live coaching clinic. We answered a bunch of questions, and we're excited about today. A reminder, mark your calendar, March 2nd from 12 to 2, we will be having our live in-person coaches clinic right here in Bridgewater, New Jersey. Don't miss out. And now, Coach Steve, what do we have in store today?
Yes, guys, welcome back. Hey, as promised, we had hundreds of submitted questions during our live coaches clinic last week, and we promised to get to all of them. So we're just gonna hammer down the list just like we did last week. We love doing this. I think it's all relevant topics that all coaches struggle with. So us being able to just kind of answer them one by one on the fly, I think every coach listening is going to struggle with this or bits and pieces of this throughout the season. So all great topics, all submitted questions. Let's jump right in.
Here we go. Coach David asks, any suggestions for kids running hitting stations for 9U ball? Hoping to keep everyone safe and stay relatively productive. So how do you do that?
Yeah, David, great question. I think in order to keep kids safe and keep them moving and keep them, engaged during practice, you have to have props. And I mean props like smush balls, wiffle balls, tennis balls, so that they can run player-run stations. I say this all the time, but having one kid hit while the rest of the guys watch is probably the most boring thing in the world, and it's the least productive. So, when you have smush balls, kids can do side tosses with one another. They can do tee work and have one player feed the tee. Other ideas would be, hitting discs. We use the hitting discs all the time in our groups where, it almost looks like a little frisbee and the kids are playing catch back and forth to work on palm up, palm down. We do med ball stuff. We use little one-arm kettlebells. We use med balls where they're actually throwing back and forth to one another. And then I would add in some hand-eye drills. Get the little plastic golf balls and, have kids work on hand-eye tossing back and forth to one another. Really, the goal is to find props that if a kid got hit in the head with it, it's not going to hurt. And that's why we swear by the smush balls. But great question right there. Duke, next one from Luke Gangway. How do you get your players to start doing extra work outside of the 2 to 3 day a week team practices?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's hard to get my kids to do their own schoolwork, nevertheless some baseball homework. But I think a lot of the things that we talk about is, like Coach Steve just talked about, is having some smush balls and having some things that they can do at home. So we actually created at Dominate the Diamond a wall ball course. And what that consists of is a bunch of different ways that all you need is a tennis ball and a wall. You can throw the ball up there. You can work on your handball exchange. You can work on your footwork. You can work on your arm slots. You can work on fly balls by bouncing it first. The ball kind of shoots up in the air. You can work on 1-knee drills. You can work on 2-knee drills. You can work on just glove work. You can work on, no glove and just working on your hands. So there's a lot of drills that you can do at home with a wall and a ball. You can also just take dry swings. You can, do like we used to do back in the day. We used to take the baseball, go to a field, and just chuck the ball as high as we could, and you just go run and catch it. So I think that, those are some really good drills. And then taking notes on what you didn't do that well at your game or at practice so that you can practice or ask your coach, hey, coach, what are some things that I need to work on? So those are the things that you'd focus on while you're at home.
We talk about the accountability partner all the time too, right? And I think meeting with those players, like Duke said, taking notes, but actually talking to your guys about what are your goals for the season and writing them down. Writing down the goals early on, and then, how do we plan on accomplishing them? A lot of times kids will say, I want to hit 300 or I want to hit a homer. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how are we going to do it? And it's not going to happen if you only practice or your glove only comes out of the bag at practice once a week. So, holding them accountable by having them write down their goals. We have a player goal sheet that we use. We have it right on our Dominate the Diamond course, but creating some sort of accountability partner for those guys to where they can't just show up and say, yeah, I got this in, right? They're journaling every single one of their workouts every single time that they train on their own. So that's a good one.
So Coach Leo says, how can I get my 12U kids to stop rolling their wrists when they're batting? That's a good one. That's tough.
That's a tough one, and I think every coach goes through this because that's just a common flaw that we see so often. So, a couple drills that I like, freezing at extension. is a drill that we use in a lot of our lessons, and that's where the kid's actually taking a full swing, but they're stopping their swing halfway. So if you can imagine the barrel of the bat pointing right at the pitcher, and they're freezing in that palm up, palm down position. I'm a big believer in oppo gap timing, and all that means is, I'm going to be on time to drive a fastball to the opposite gap. So that's just, me as a righty thinking I'm going to hit a line drive right over the second baseman's head, or lefties thinking I'm going to hit a line drive over the shortstop. So having that mental approach will help them stay inside and through it a little bit better. During batting practice rounds, have middle away rounds. Play target practice in BP. Kids love a competition. So when you can set up a screen or a target or something that's going to make noise if they hit that target, and it's almost teaching them without telling them to stay inside the ball, to stay through the ball, to not roll over too early. And then the last one, I think connection ball. We use connection balls all the time. It almost looks like a little mini beach ball, and you put it in the front arm, and it really just helps with the direction of their front arm. It helps kind of set the angles of that front arm to get that arm working back through the pitcher, as opposed to, for a righty working towards third base or a lefty working towards first. So very good question right there. Coach Duke, another one. Miguel Reyes. This is one that a lot of coaches are, I'm sure questioning, but at what age do you stress kids start using J-bands?
I don't think there's a wrong or right answer. I think that it's almost like with anything, any tool that you use can be bad or good, like a hammer, right? It can be used to build a house, or it can be used to crack things and break things. So I think that at 10, 11, 12, a lot of people might say, once they're 12 or 13 and they're starting to grow a little bit more and they're starting to mature and go onto the big field, maybe that's more, weight training and strength training. But as far as J-bands and just having some type of resistance for your shoulders, I think there's nothing wrong at 10, 11, 12, teaching them how to warm up properly, how to get their shoulders warmed up, because it's not an over stressor. It's something that you might be doing 8 or 10 reps just to get a little sweat and to get some blood flow going into the area. And the J-bands, they have a great workout program. So you can go on their website and see their warm-up routine and their exercise routine. We also have an awesome one called the arm activation routine. You can go on dominatetheDiamond.com, go on the top right, it says free resources, and we have an actual arm activation workout program that you can just download for free. Take it, make a copy of it, laminate it, and put it right into your bag. And then as a coach, you can just bring it to practice, hang it on the fence, and the kids can work on that. But so I think 10, 11, 12, I don't think you're ever too young to really do it, because again, you're just trying to get them into the routine of knowing that before I throw, I should be doing something to get my arm ready.
What was Coach Duke's warm-up routine at 10 years old?
A couple arm circles, and here we go. That's about it.
You hit the nail on the head, though. It's teaching them the habits of warming up properly at that young age. So obviously there's benefits to it, no doubt. But you're telling your kids, listen, you can't just show up like we did, right, and do some arm circles, a couple, shoulder smacks, and boom, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. So Coach George O, thoughts on starting pitchers from the stretch or the windup? I see most kids learn with a windup, but I see lots of advice that it's simpler and enhances learning proper mechanics if they start from the stretch instead, and then add the windup later. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of younger kids, it's just an extra step, right? You're taking the step back. You're working on turning your shoulders and your hips. So if you just start from the stretch, I think it's, again, minimizing the things that can go wrong, right? It's helping them stay balanced. I think it's a lot easier to have kids stand in a line and work on a leg lift and the proper balance over their back leg. You can talk about separation from that point. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching kids from the stretch, teaching them where they want to get their leg lift to, how they want to stay balanced, how they're going to start working down the mound, getting to that good, landing position with their arms up, with their front side leading towards the catcher. So I think there's a lot of value in just starting from the stretch and then transitioning to the windup, kind of like a hitter. Most kids at a young age, especially, you're going to teach them, all right, get nice and wide. Let's work on a short little load. We're not going to be doing a crazy leg kick or anything, at a super young age, just because it simplifies it. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. We've got a good one from an anonymous attendee here, Duke. We have 4 weeks with one practice each week before our first game. This is my first year coaching 9 to 12U. Last year I was the assistant coach, but there really wasn't any structure. I want to bring that to this league as a coach and help develop the players. I really like the sample practice plans and plan to follow as closely to them as I can. I'll also make adjustments if needed based off the players' needs. What are some recommendations you have for starting out?
Oh, that's a
4
good
weeks
one.
is a short amount of time.
4 weeks is a short amount of time. You have to get a lot of stuff done. I mean, you're talking 9 to 12, so it sounds like it's like a rec league. So it doesn't seem like it's too intense, too much going on. But, we always talk about, making sure that we know the signs, right? The kids know what the signs are so we can communicate with them. I wouldn't spend too much time, but I would have some sort of sign system. The other thing is making sure that we attack the hitting, fielding, throwing, and catching right in week 1, because we have to know who can pitch, who can catch, who plays what positions, and it's almost like we're running a mini tryout and just kind of putting stars next to their names. Okay, this kid can play the infield. I think this guy's an outfielder, because you have to make some of those decisions really quick as well. I think you jump into some base running stuff, especially 9 to 12. Are they able to lead and steal? If they are, you have to teach them how to lead, right? So leading is something that you're going to want to teach. And then you're just going to throw some BP and kind of see who can hit and who can do what. But I think covering the basics of hitting, fielding, throwing, pitching, seeing who can pitch, who can throw strikes, and having an understanding of that, who can handle catching the ball, just kind of figuring out who your position players are and where they go. Not that you're not going to move them all around, but you need to really narrow it down really fast of who your pitchers and catchers are going to be. So I think that's where I would start.
Yeah, I really like your point on hammering down on the basics and really working on the fundamentals. I think too often coaches get so tied up into the game strategy where, you're working on rundowns or bunt defense or first and thirds. And yes, that happens. But if you don't focus on being able to play catch, and control the baseball, it's almost counterproductive to work on all that stuff. So I think, like Duke just said, make sure your guys can do the basics first, and then after week 1, take a lot of notes, and I'm sure you'll have a laundry list of things to focus on, going from that practice week 4 into, week 2 of games.
That sounds good. And speaking of counterproductive, this happened to me this week, and I want to get your take on how you would handle this. So I was in a mini clinic with 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, and we're just using wiffle balls, doing a little home run derby. And one of the kids behind me kept taking the balls and throwing them at me, hit me in the back of the head. And I was like, I turned around, I looked at him, I'm like, can you please stop doing that? 2 seconds later, I throw one pitch, the kid hits a line drive. I get plugged in the back of the neck again. This time it kind of hurt, and I was kind of fired up. What would you do as a coach for a disciplinary action of a kid that's like pegging you with wiffle balls? What do you tell a coach when that's happening?
You hate to stop practice because of one kid doing something wrong. So I think I would either get my assistant coach's attention and have him call him over to the side and maybe have a talk with him, or I might find another coach to take my position as the thrower, and I would take that kid off to the side and say, look, you're slowing down practice for everybody here. I don't want to have to put you off to the side and sit down and watch, but if you throw the ball at me one more time, that's what's going to happen.
I think
or if you do what you want to do, when he gets up the home plate, you start pegging him with the balls.
You know what? That's actually what I was thinking about. That's what I really wanted to do. But I think that's what happens sometimes is coaches don't reprimand. So instead it's like, okay, go sit down for a minute. Or you know what? Let's call your mom. And really quick today, okay, I'll stop. It's like, okay, well, so sometimes you have to pull that higher card of, to let them know who's boss, or next thing you know, you're going to have 5 kids pegging you back in the neck with balls.
Without a doubt.
So that was good. That was a good answer.
How about this one, Duke? Justin Pasco. I've been coaching the same kids for the last 3 years, so I've gotten to know them and their parents extremely well. I always plan my practices and keep the kids super involved. How do you ensure that the familiarity between myself as the coach and the players doesn't impact their learning, as they may get the old, oh, it's just Coach JP, we know what he's coaching, etc.?
One of the things that we talk about, with our own kids is we talk about the hat method, right? You go into the car, your hat's on, your hat's off. I think something that would be a really cool idea for Stacy would be to have 2 different hats. Like have the hat that you wear around that they know you by, and it's like she's switching her hat to I'm in my game hat. And that's the game hat that she talks to the team prior to the season, to the parents, to the other players. Like, listen, when I'm wearing this hat, I'm your coach and I'm not your friend. I'm not so-and-so's mom or dad. I'm coach now. And I think that's also like flipping the switch of, for the kids too, right? If they just had a sleepover at your house last night and they were hanging out with your son or daughter and your buddies, it's hard for them to understand and make the switch. So I think that having that specific hat that, their hangout hat comes off and I'm now in my hat. Like, I'm now in my coaching hat, so it's serious. You say coach, you call me this, you call me that. That way the expectations are the same. So I think, it'll make it easier for the coach. It'll make it easier for the players and also the parents, from coming into the dugout or wanting to hang out like they hung out,
no, that's good.
At the movies.
I was going to say the same thing, in terms of my relationship with my team because I've coached them for so long. One idea that I used is not that I run out of things to say, but, you find yourself with 6, 7, sometimes 8 games on a weekend. You're saying the same thing in every pregame speech. So I would just nominate a captain of the day, and they would be in charge of doing the pregame speech. And the kids loved it. Some took, complete ownership over it. Some kids were shy and didn't really like to talk in front of the team. But, I would obviously always send my same message about attitude and work ethic and just playing the game the right way and leaving it all out on the field. And it was cool to see some of the kids really just come out of their shell and, take on that leadership role. And it also was just a different way to get the kids fired up. It was just a different look for them. So, I like that one a lot.
So how do you help a kid that has been destroyed in confidence by using big hands up, like a big negative coach? How do you help them quickly regain trust in their new coach and not be so afraid of failure?
That's a good question. I think every coach deals with this. From previous coaches, maybe even the players' parents. I think it starts off with you getting to know those players, you getting to know them, on a personal level, outside of the field, talking to them during warm-ups, talking to them, in the dugout, when you're getting the pick on the field and you're picking up and cleaning up, understanding what their fears are and, why they're afraid of failure, and then letting them know it's okay. Again, there's mental mistakes, there's physical mistakes. I'm a big believer that I will never get on a kid for making an error. I will never get on a kid for striking out as long as they're being aggressive, and they're up there swinging it. Mental errors, on the other hand, not jogging or not sprinting down the line and jogging, maybe throwing equipment, arguing a bad call, missing a sign. Those are things that the kids can control. But in a game of failure where you're going to fail so frequently, we have to let the kids have the freedom to do it. I remember I had a coach one time and, we were taking really bad leads. We just weren't getting far enough off the bag. And, his fix to that was, will one of you guys get picked off? Like, somebody get picked off, and then you'll know your limit. You'll know exactly how far you can take your lead as soon as you get picked off once. Or, going up to home plate and, not being afraid to swing a changeup when you're hunting for the fastball. Like, you look at Kyle Schwarber, first pitch of, I forget what game it was in the World Series, ended up hitting like a 450-foot homer. He was cheating for a fastball, ambushed the fastball. If somebody threw him a changeup right there, you're going to miss it by 3 feet. Right. But that was just him being fearless, just selling out. And, sometimes it takes guessing and sitting on a certain pitch. And I think kids go up to home plate so often, and it's like, okay, let me see if it's a strike first and then make up my mind if I'm going to swing. When in reality, we don't have enough time to make up that decision. So, it's got to be I'm swinging until it's not a strike, or I'm going to dive for that ball, or I'm going to throw this pitch hard. Like, you're going to fail. It's part of it. And I think it's the coach's job to ensure the players that I am not going to be the coach that's going to get on you and scream at you every single time you make an error. Of course, there's standards we're going to live up to, and we're going to play the game the right way and do things the right way, but don't be afraid to make an error. Don't be afraid to walk a guy. Don't be afraid to swing and miss. It's all part of it.
And you know what else I think is great? I had a lesson yesterday, and I had never seen his dad at the lesson before. The kid's always poised, and when he makes a bad swing, he just takes a deep breath. We kind of talk back and forth, good dialogue. But man, his dad was there yesterday, and it was so different. Every time he took a bad swing, it was almost like he had to show that it was a bad swing and that he knew it was a bad swing and that it wasn't. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? So we get done with the first bucket of balls. We're walking to get the balls. I'm like, are you nervous because your dad's here? He's like, well, not really, but kind of a little bit. And it was just like a totally different kid. I'm like, listen, we'll talk to your dad afterwards. We'll tell him how the lesson went. Just have fun with your lesson. Half of the time, the guy's on his phone, probably answering emails, and probably his eyes aren't even glued on you. You think they are. I'm like, but you can't see him. He's not really even watching you. He's just here, and I'm like, so have fun in the lesson. We'll talk about the lesson. He's like, okay, it got better a little bit, but to your point about mom or dad or, that sort of thing at the game and the pressures and the failures, as parents, we don't think sometimes that we really do matter or they do care, but oh my gosh, yes, they do. They care way more than we think. They're looking way more than we think, and it does matter. So our body language as a parent or as a coach parent really matters, to them and the people around them. So we have to be very careful with how we show what our thoughts or our feelings are, because whether we think it or not, it's happening.
That's so funny you say that, because I had a lesson yesterday that their dad was right behind them and then walked away. And I don't know if they came out here to talk or they, went to the bathroom or took a call outside. But like every 3 swings, they were like turning around to look. And I looked and I said, "You all right?" And she goes, "Yeah, I was honestly just waiting for my dad to make the comment. Like on a bad swing." And he wasn't even there. But yes, that overlying fear of like, oh my God, please don't miss-hit this ball because I know I'm going to hear it. So it's just funny you say that, because yeah, I went through it too yesterday, and I think kids go through it all the time. They're afraid to make a mistake. They're afraid to hear the parents' feedback. And I don't know, from the flip side, if you're a parent and you heard this, you'd probably be like, oh my God, let me just hang outside next time. I don't even want to go in.
So let's stay on that topic then. What are some words of advice then, like that you can give parents or people around, or like what are some things that you think of that a parent can do? Because I think that everyone listening to this is probably like, damn, am I that mom? Am I that dad? Am I that coach? Like, how do you almost like that accountability of that is, I think you just got to check yourself a little bit and be like, well, think about it. When your son or daughter does make a mistake, how do you respond to that? What does your body language look like? What do you say to them? Do you say something every single time they make a mistake, or do you like wave at them? And like, it's almost like you got to think about that.
I think you just got to almost be invisible. Like, you've said it so many times, but after the game, you look at your son or daughter and just say, "Man, I loved watching you play today." Like something as simple as that. Or you with the hat rule, when you take your hat off, you're not coach anymore, you're dad. Like, I feel fortunate that I had an uncle and grandparents that would be there to watch me, and they'd be loud and vocal, cheering on the team and excited to be there. But I was never afraid of what they were going to say to me after the game. And I laugh about it all the time, but like my grandma would look at me after going 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts and like give me a hug and say, "You did great today." And it was almost like, I didn't do great. I did the opposite of great today. But it was just, looking back, it's funny because I didn't play with that anxiety of, oh man, like I'm going to hear it on the way home. We heard Coach Ballgame talk about this too, and he was saying how, the guy in the 3-hole on his team was all-state, one of the best hitters he's ever seen, and asked him, "Man, how do you handle pressure situations like this?" And he's a laid-back, chill kind of guy anyway. But he said he turned around and that player's dad was standing right by the on-deck circle, hands in the fence, like not in a bad way, but he was just so into it and just there. And then he looked out at his dad and he was in a lawn chair like 450 feet away in left center. There's something to be said about that, though. Like those parents that can just sit back, watch, and enjoy the game. If you're that helicopter parent after every single swing saying something, or be ready for this one, like be ready to swing, stop stepping in the bucket, like every single swing, like you're almost teaching robots instead of just go play, man, go have fun.
And that's like Al Leiter, right? When Jack was on our team, he'd be playing second base. Al had his lawn chair. It'd be behind home plate for about a half an inning. That's it. And next thing you know, you'd look, there's the lawn chair, but there's no, you're like, where'd Al go? He was in the cornfields with his golf club, and he was just swinging at weeds. Like, he was just walking all over the place, and it was just like, my son I'm watching the game. He doesn't need the pressure of me, being here. It was like so funny because there was his chair, but he was never in it.
How about this one? I've got a kid that I coached for a long time that his dad would sit behind home plate with the radar gun, telling him how fast he was throwing. And after each inning, he's like, "Oh, what was my velo at?" Like I would have to look at the parent and say, like, "You're gonna have to move. You're gonna have to go sit down the line or put the radar gun away." It takes the competitiveness out of it.
What about that Instagram post that you put about the Washington Nationals? I don't care how hard. I don't care your exit velo. I don't care your velo on ball 4.
I don't care how hard your velo was on ball 4. It's so true.
Throw strikes, have fun with the game, and just play.
We need to make one. I don't care how hard your exit velo was on strike 3.
Wow, that was an intense session. We absolutely love those questions. Keep those questions coming. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we will see you next time. Continue to help your parents, players, and fellow coaches dominate the diamond on and off the field. Until next time, dominate the diamond today.